Good evening and welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Thomas Burr. I'm the Washington correspondent for the Salt Lake Tribune and the 109th president of the National Press Club. I am also, tonight, your moderator for the only debate between the candidates in the election for leadership of the 1.3 million-member International Brotherhood of Teamsters. This debate, part of the National Press Club's Newsmaker series, is organized by the Office of the Election Supervisor, an independent authority that supervises the election of the top officers of the Teamsters Union. Richard Mark is the election supervisor. He served as election supervisor for the 2011 and 2006 Teamster officer elections as well. But let me first introduce the candidates and the panel of journalists who will question them. The election rules require a debate among candidates nominated for general president, but the rules give candidates the option to appear themselves in this debate or designate their running mate, their candidate for General Secretary-Treasurer, to appear in their stead. Tonight, presidential candidate Fred Zuckerman appears here in person. Mr. Zuckerman joined the Teamsters when he helped organize Chemical Express in Houston, Texas in 1979, and later took a job as a car hauler in Kentucky Local 89. After serving as steward for 7 years, Mr. Zuckerman became a business agent and was elected Local 89 president in 2000. Mr. Zuckerman has served as a grievance panel chair under General President Kerry and General President Hoffa, who was the IBT car haul director. He is currently the president of Local 89 and of Joint Council 94. Welcome, Mr. Zuckerman.
Thank you.
Candidate Jim Hoffa has chosen to be represented by his running mate for Secretary-Treasurer Ken Hall. Mr. Hall is a second-generation Teamster. He started out as a Teamster member of Local 175 in Charleston, West Virginia in 1976, where he worked in the oil fields for Pennzoil. Since then, he has served as a shop steward, business agent, officer of the Joint Council, president of the Teamsters Local 175, package division director, international vice president, trustee on health, welfare, and pension plans, and general secretary-treasurer. Mr. Hall has served as the chief negotiator of the UPS National Master Agreement since 1997 and the chief negotiator of the UPS Freight Agreement. Welcome, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
Let me introduce tonight's panelists. Closest to me on the panel, Michael Rose is a senior labor reporter at Bloomberg BNA, where he reports on various labor issues and trends, including collective bargaining agreements, union organizing efforts, National Labor Relations Board decisions and litigation, and developments within labor unions, including the Teamsters. He reported from the union's convention in Las Vegas, both earlier this summer and in 2011. Michael joined Bloomberg BNA in 2008 and has served as Bloomberg BNA's labor reporter on Capitol Hill. He has a bachelor's degree from Brandeis University and a master's in journalism from New York University. Kimberly Atkins is the chief Washington reporter and columnist for the Boston Herald, and also a guest host of C-SPAN's morning show, Washington Journal. She's also been a staff writer for the Journal News in Westchester County, New York, and the Boston Globe. Before launching her journalism career, Kimberly practiced labor and employment law. She is a graduate of Wayne State University, Boston University School of Law, and the Columbia University School of Journalism. Harold Meyerson is the executive editor of the American Prospect, the Washington-based liberal magazine where he has been since 2001. From 2003 to 2016, he also wrote a weekly op-ed column for the Washington Post. From 1989 through 2001, he was executive editor of the LA Weekly, the nation's largest metropolitan weekly. His articles on politics, labor, the economy, foreign policy, and American culture have also appeared in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The New Republic, The Nation, The New Statesman, the op-ed, commentary, and book review sections of The New York Times and The Los Angeles Times, and in numerous other publications. He is a member of the editorial board of Dissent. His print journalism has won numerous awards. He is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Educated in Los Angeles public schools and at Columbia University, Harold currently resides here in Washington. We have a live audience here at the National Press Club in Washington, and the debate is being distributed live now on C-SPAN and over the internet at Teamsters Union website and on their Facebook page. In addition to questions from our panel, audience members may submit questions in writing on the cards provided. Please pass them to David Hodis. Mr. Hodis is over here right now, the vice chair of our Newsmakers Committee. Also, those watching online or on C-SPAN will be able to submit questions by email to candidatesforum@ibtvote.org. That's candidatesforum@ibtvote.org. Or text questions to 202-270-8026. Once again, that number is 202 270-8026 for consideration. Tonight's debate is the one opportunity for Teamsters to see leaders of rival slates at the same time discussing major issues confronting their union. On October 6th, the election supervisor will mail ballots to each of the 1.3 million members of the Teamsters, and members will cast ballot votes for 21 contested offices. The ballot count will begin on November 14. Candidates, you know the rules. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. The order of the opening statements has been determined by the drawing of lots a little while ago, and by that drawing of lots, Mr. Zuckerman gets the first opening statement, and Mr. Hall will get the closing statement. When we begin questions, as moderator, I will direct the flow of all questions, calling on the panelists in order and alternating between the candidates, with the first question going to Mr. Hall. The candidate to whom the question is addressed will have 90 seconds to respond. The other candidate is then given 45 seconds for a rebuttal or comment, and the candidate first question will have 30 seconds for the rebuttal. If you think an answer needs further clarification, if I think an answer needs further clarification or a follow-up, I may ask, or my panelists do, I may ask for follow-up questions, and you're entitled to 45 seconds. After questions, the candidates will have an opportunity to deliver a 2-minute closing statement. We have a timekeeper in the auditorium in the back, and the candidates and panelists can see the time display for their answers. And when time is up, I will stop the answer to keep the debate moving. Borrowing a line from Harold over here, I may let you finish your sentence, but not your paragraph. Finally, let me caution the audience against any outbursts or any kind of result that may take away speaking time from the candidate of your choice tonight, or even further sanctions from the election supervisor. With that, let's begin with the candidate opening statements, starting with Mr. Zuckerman.
Thank you. Thank you to the National Press Club, moderator, panelists, and everyone here tonight for this debate. Again, General President Hoffa is a no-show. As you know, Hoffa has never debated in front of the membership during an election. You may not know this, but this is the 3rd debate that he's conducted this year. It's time for Hoffa to stop being a coward and stand in front of the membership and answer the members' questions. So they send Ken Hall, who I feel is the most dishonest and corrupt union official in the Teamsters. During the 2000 election debate, in Hoffa's absence, Ken took shots at me and stated car haul declined by half during my tenure as a car haul director, which is not true, and I'm here now and we can debate that issue. He also claimed I turned UPS full-time jobs into part-time jobs, which is also untrue, and I'm open to debate those issues. In fact, unlike General President Hoffa, I'm here willing to debate any issue. The worst thing you can do as a Teamster official is to lie to the membership, because you can't start a conversation to fix a problem when the conversation starts with a lie. I believe we should be able to talk about the implementation of the UPS contract, how the IBT lied to the membership and told them that it was only implemented because of health care, and why the Team Care proposal was the IBT's proposal. I also believe we should talk about the bribe Ken Hall offered me 6 years ago so I would not run against them in the election. He was willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dues dollars to get me to support their campaign. And we should talk about the continued corruption at the IBT that, as a member of the General Executive Board, he continues to ignore. We have real problems in this union. Corruption, loss of membership, lack of organized and deteriorating contract and standards, and loss of pensions for over 500,000 Teamsters.
Thank you.
See you, Mom.
Mr. Hall.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address a number of issues facing Teamster members. I'm proud of what the Hoffa Hall team has done. We've organized over 200,000 workers in the past 10 years, with nearly half of those coming in just the past 5 years. We have FedEx Freight at the table, which nobody thought would happen. We have contracts that provide the best health care for our members than anyone in this country. But we have to work on a major problem, and that's our pension problems. We have got to make sure that we are working together, that we continue to work together, because we need to hold those members of Congress, whether they be Republicans or Democrats, accountable, and to ensure that our members get the same kind of relief that those greedy bastards on Wall Street who destroyed the economy and with it our pension. Now, as you have already heard, My opponent here is a self-described angry man. But he's not angry for all the reasons that he tells you. He's angry because in January of 2010, he practically begged us to let him get on the Hoffa Hall slate as a candidate, and we rejected that. And it wasn't personal. At the time, I liked Fred. It was just because of his absolute horrible record as a car hall director. And you're going to hear him talk a lot tonight about his local because he doesn't want you to hear about his record on an international level. And by the way, Fred, I don't know why you're complaining that Jim Hoffa's not here and that you're having to debate me. I'm the number 2 person on our slate, and you were the second choice to be general president on your slate, only after Tim Sylvester lost his own local election. You're number 2 and your running mate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. The honor of the first question by the rules goes to me, and the question goes to you, Mr. Hall. Let's get right into it and answer this directly. The election rules state that the presidential candidate may appear or send his running mate, and you're with us here tonight, Mr. Hall. Where is Mr. Hoffa, and why isn't he with us?
And again, it seems like a fair fight here. We're both number 2s, but Jim Hoffa's out doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's out representing our members. I mean, the fact is, Jim Hoffa's been in office for 17 years. Our members have seen him walking picket lines. They've seen him making speeches at rallies, supporting people trying to organize. They've seen him on the picket lines. They've seen him in negotiations. They know who Jim Hoffa is, and they know what he stands for. And there's, frankly, no good reason that Jim Hoffa would be standing here and letting an angry local union officer just run down this union. He has more important things to do than that.
Thank you, sir. You still have time left, but we can move on. The response, Mr. Zuckerman?
Yeah, Jim Hoffa should be here. We've got big problems in this union, and he should be held accountable in front of the membership to tell him what his solutions are going to be going forward for the next 5 years. Like I said in my opening statement, this is the 3rd debate that he's ducked this year. I invited him to a debate in February to have a debate before the membership and before the convention, and they bailed out on that. Local 344 in Milwaukee, a UPS local, invited the candidates to debate in that local union in front of their membership as a request of their membership. And he's ducked that debate. And he's not here today either. That tells you the type of leadership that he's going to provide.
Mr. Hall, you have 30 seconds to respond if you'd like.
Well, again, I would just remind the audience that up until 2010, Fred supported every issue and every policy that Jim Hoffa had. He didn't have these issues in previous debates, only when he wasn't selected to run on our campaign, with our campaign as a vice president. That's when he became angry in 2010. Now, you haven't heard him deny that because it's facts. And so let's get on with the debate. We've got more important things to do than talk about where Jim Hoffa is. Let's talk about the issues.
Let's move on to the debate. I'm going to turn to the panel now. The first question is going to Mr. Zuckerman, and Mr. Rose, you have the first question.
So shifting gears a little bit, the Teamsters is a union that's known for its independence streak, and more than 10 years ago, the Teamsters left the AFL-CIO. I was wondering if you could discuss the significance of that decision and whether you think it was a good move, and if you were elected president, Mr. Zuckerman, would you consider rejoining the AFL-CIO, and if so, under what circumstances? And also, do you feel that the Teamsters should work with other unions more than they already do?
Absolutely they should. One of our failures is because we've divided the House of Labor by pulling out of the AFL-CIO and creating this Change to Win. Change to Win has been a failure. It started with 9 international unions in 2005, and now it's down to 3, and they do nothing. It was supposed to be a vehicle to continue organizing, and we're not organizing. Right now, all we do is steal members or merge with other international unions. The international union claims they have 1.4 million members. That's incorrect. The last numbers were 1.25. If you take the mergers from like the BLET, the maintenance away folks, the GCIU, that was 130,000 that we brought in. So you take that off the 1.25 and now you're at 1.1. If you take the recent organizing victories that they claim, Ken claimed it in his opening statement, they were not organizing drives. They were mergers with other local unions, or they were raiding other local unions, like in 2011, the local down there, which they took from the FOP. We are not organizing anybody. What we are doing is taking them from other areas, and union density in the United States is down to 8% now, and that's because we're not organizing new people.
Mr. Hall, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I just told you the numbers are what the numbers are. We've organized over 220,000 people in 10 years. Now, in terms of whether we should have gotten out of the AFL, we still work together with the AFL on lots of different programs and currently are working with them on political programs. We work with unions all over the country. Fred's just not aware of that. But I would point out once again, 10 years ago when we did this, Fred was a supporter of it. He was on board. He supported the policies. But then, you know, they don't call you Flip-Flop Freddy for nothing. But the fact is, in Local 89, you haven't done any organizing. You've organized 4 companies in the last 5 years, and out of 8 attempts. 4 companies, 108 members.
30 seconds to respond.
Sure. Let's talk about Ken Hall's record. In 17 years that Hoff has been in office, Ken Hall has lost 25% of his membership. That's a fact. His pension fund is in the toilet. That's a fact. Now, he can't hide from that. And as for me not objecting to the policies for the last 10 years, that is inaccurate, because I went to Hoff in 2008, and that's when we broke ranks, when he would not organize in Car Hall.
Thank you. Next question is directed to Mr. Hall, and it comes from Kimberly Atkins.
Mr. Hall, last week UPS CEO David Abney urged other business leaders to push Congress to support the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal, saying that it was important to support small and mid-sized businesses. What specifically is your message to Congress about the TPP as it affects your membership? And if it passes, what would you do to protect your membership from the perils of the TPP as you see them?
Well, first of all, we don't expect it to pass because we have been working day and night over the past couple of years to make sure that TPP doesn't pass. And because Dave Abney was the CEO of UPS supports it, doesn't mean anything to us. That doesn't mean we should support it. In fact, Dave Abney and UPS supports ALEC, another group that we despise. And so we have a lot of disagreements over what the support is. But I can tell you that we're not looking for what we're going to do to protect our members once it passes. We're looking to keep the pressure on to make sure that TPP doesn't pass. Now, we're in a position where both presidential candidates seem to be against it, and lots of members of Congress. We think we're going to be successful in being able to do that. Now, and that's really my answer on this issue. But I do want, with the rest of my time, to, it's fact check time, Fred. You said you broke with Jim Hoffa in 2008. And here's a letter from you on January 8, 2010, not only talking about how you've supported him forever, but this is the letter you sent asking to be put on the board and pledging your undying support from your local and your joint council. This is January 2010 on your letterhead, signed by you. So it's time to tell the truth, something that hasn't happened a lot in your campaign.
Mr. Zuckerman, you have 45 seconds to respond to
Sure.
both counts, I guess.
Sure. We're against TPP, and that's pretty obvious. So let's talk about this letter. This letter, and it doesn't say all the things that you say in it, okay? But this letter was requested at a joint council meeting in Charleston, West Virginia in 2009, December 2009. Ken Hall came to me, and we're at Randy's bar, and you had requested that I write the General President a letter to make that request. And I specifically said, you know what, Ken, I ain't going to beg nobody for a job. And I refused to do that, and Rich LeBeau is the one that wrote that. I signed it, but Rich LeBeau is the one that wrote that. So don't come in here and telling lies in here like that.
Mr. Hall, redirect.
The only thing I can tell you is at the bottom of it says Fred Zuckerman, and it's got your signature on it. And it does say, I've been an active and strong supporter of your administration since 1998 and have worked hard to have our local and joint council support your policies and programs. And it goes on to say, as you know, Local 89 is one of the largest locals in the IBT and is the home of the UPS Air Hub. I would be honored to serve on the General Executive Board and as president of both Joint Council 94 and Local 89 would promise you the full support of our officers. It wasn't my fault you wrote this letter.
Our next question goes to Mr. Zuckerman from Harold Myerson.
Mr. Zuckerman, the travails of the Central State Pension Fund are fairly well known. Is there anything the previous generation of the Teamster leadership should have done about that pension fund to have kept it in better shape? And now going forward, now that Mr. Feinberg has struck down the arrangement, is there anything different that a Zuckerman administration would do that's different from what a Hoffa administration would do in trying to get Congress to resolve these problems?
Sure. Even in 2008, when I went to the General President and told him that it was important to organize, and he rejected that, I feel that we have to organize in the core industries and put participants into the funds. When Ken Hall took UPS out of Central States, that collapsed the fund. At the time, there were, when UPS was in the fund, there were 104,000 participants. It was like a 2-to-1 ratio. Add on the fact that they didn't organize since 2000 when Jim Hoffa took office or put any participants in. Had they not taken UPS out of the fund and had they organized and put participants into the fund would be healthy today. It's not healthy because of a lot of bad decisions, and they're still trying to take people out of the funds. In 2007, the Central States Fund took in $1.44 billion in participant contributions. Today, they take in $568,000 in participant contributions. It's minus $880 million, almost $1 billion that they're not taking in. The fund cannot survive without participants. Right now, Central States is 59,000 participants to 235,000 retirees. It's going this way. They're trying to take Kroger out now, which would make it 52,000. Okay? They are purposely collapsing this fund.
Mr. Hall.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Hall, can I ask you to follow up with the specific allegation of taking UPS out of the Central State Pension Fund?
I'd be happy to, because Fred's rewriting history again. He said he broke with Jim in 2008, which I just proved is a lie, but in 2007, Fred Zuckerman sat as a member of the National Negotiating Committee at UPS. Now, he didn't show up very much, but he was appointed as a member. He voted for it. His members voted for it at his recommendation in his local union. They voted for that contract. And so now he tells you this. The fact is, this is the facts. This is not the angry rhetoric. The facts are that in January of 2015, Central States submitted to the Treasury Department that if the economy hadn't collapsed in 2008 and 2009, with the $6 billion they got from UPS would have made the fund fully funded by 2028. That's their words.
Mr. Zuckerman.
They were advised by Central States not to do it. They did it anyway. That's a part of bargaining. You either keep people in the pension funds or take people out of the pension funds. Everybody knew that it was a mistake to do that. We were told in that negotiations that you had done some due diligence, and the officials that were advising you said that it was a good thing for Central States. We didn't know that Central States had recommended that they didn't do it and that it would be a very bad thing, and ultimately that's what happened.
Thank you. Let's start over on the panel again. Mr. Rose, you have a question for Mr. Hall?
Yes, this is a question about organizing. The union recently has touted its inroads in organizing new industries, such as healthcare and municipal government workers. Are you concerned that the union is putting too much emphasis on new industries at the expense of its traditional basis of support in industries such as freight and car haul? And how do you strike a balance between organizing in industries where the Teamsters have historically represented many workers and branching out into new areas?
Well, as part of the 220,000 people that we've organized in the past 10 years, I would just point out that 12,000 of those was at a freight company that used to be called Overnight, that's now UPS Freight, the first major organizing campaign in 50 years in freight. We now are sitting across, now some of the naysayers said this wouldn't happen, but we're now sitting across the table from FedEx Freight, which a lot of people say would never happen. We're in negotiations with them. We've organized a lot of people, but you continue to hear, I don't think there's anything wrong with organizing healthcare workers and others. In fact, I think everybody deserves an opportunity to be represented by our union and to have better working conditions and better pay and benefits. Now, if my opponent can tell you which of the companies that we've organized that we shouldn't be organized and it should not be in the union, that's fine. But I've heard this core industry argument for the past 2 elections. I listened to this from one of his running mates 5 years ago. We believe everyone has a chance, but we have organized just in the past 7 or 8 years more in the core industry than there has been in the past 50 years in this organization.
Mr. Zuckerman?
Yeah, that's just not true. Organizing in core industries keep the standards up in those industries. They talk about FedEx or they talk about UPS Freight. UPS Freight was given to them when they agreed to get out of the UPS pension plan. UPS Freight has been a disaster. Worst freight contract out there. Didn't help anybody in the freight industry. What happens in the core industries, such as warehousing, such as grocery, such as freight, such as car haul, and others, if you don't keep those standards up, every time you get to the bargaining table, the first thing they say is we need concessions because we got to negotiate down here. If we were to bring these people up, it raises our standard of living, it raises our contracts, and we can put people into the pension funds, which we need to do.
Mr. Hall?
I can only respond by saying UPS Freight is the highest paid freight workers, whether they are union or non-union, in the United States of America. So how Fred can say it didn't raise them up, I don't know. But the one thing that I can tell you is it is strange to me that you would bring that up, since your drivers at Kroger, the largest warehouse, grocery warehouse in the country, has gotten a 6-year contract that they get a total of 64 cents an hour increase over 6 years. Take care of your business at home.
The next question goes to Mr. Zuckerman from Ms. Atkins.
Mr. Zuckerman, you accuse the Hoffa Hall administration of negotiating, quote, weak concessionary contracts. Can you point out specific instances in contracts you've negotiated where you successfully blocked the kind of concessions you accuse your opponent of supporting?
Sure. We'll talk about that trans-service contract, that Zenith contract that he was just talking about. In 2006, Kroger wanted to subcontract a lot of our work, and they wanted concessions to do that. We negotiated with those companies, and we negotiated far superior contracts than the IBT has negotiated in the Kroger master contract. We don't pay for health care. We got better health care. We're in the Central States Pension Fund. We have far superior conditions and benefits that they negotiate, and we continue to do that.
Mr. Hall, to follow up, can you point to specific instances where you push back against proposed management concessions?
We do that in every negotiations we have. If you sit down with an employer, they want concessions from the very first day. But I do want to, and we have to look at not just issues of subcontracting and other things. For example, and I didn't hear Mr. Zuckerman say anything about that 66 cents over 6 years, but he's also failing to tell you that in that Kroger contract, they have the right, they have unlimited use of casual employees, which is worse than subcontracting. But we face that, we face concessionary attempts by employers in almost every time we sit down at the table. He calls the UPS contract concessionary. I call it people who make between $88,000 as a package driver and $105,000 as a feeder driver, and total benefits of $138,000 to $150,000. That's hardly concessionary, and it's much better than the contracts I've seen him have.
Your response, Mr. Zuckerman?
Yeah. The UPS contract that he identifies is a small segment of the UPS people that work there. They have a lot of part-timers that start at $10 an hour. They don't get health care for the first 12 months. They only have a 3-hour guarantee. You know, I was campaigning in New York City not too long ago, and down at Foster Avenue in Brooklyn, you had people showing up on city buses for $10 an hour for these part-time jobs, and then they leave and they go to a homeless shelter. We've got to do better than that. And that's a huge majority of the workers at UPS is part-time employees.
I'm going to stop you there, sir. Your time is up. Thank you. Our next question goes to Mr. Hall from Harold Meyerson.
Mr. Hall, by my count, the Teamsters are one of only 3 national unions that hasn't made an endorsement in that other presidential election that seems to be going on as we speak. And most of the other unions have sort of concluded that whatever her flaws may be, Hillary Clinton would be a more pro-worker president than Donald Trump. Do you think that's an accurate assessment? And why have the Teamsters not, to date, made an endorsement in the American presidential contest? Well,
let me try to answer this. And that is, first of all, it's obviously important to our members, and it's something that we're in a process right now. We don't, from the top down, just declare that we're going to support one person over the other. We do surveys with our local union leaders, our joint council leaders. We just sent a survey to Fred, and we get the pulse of what our people across the country is saying. We are in that process right now, and I would expect that there will be an announcement from us coming very, very shortly. But not only are we talking about the presidential election, we're also very, very focused on what is going to happen in Congress, because we want to make sure, as I said in my opening, we want to make sure that the people that we are supporting is going to be working with us and is going to, frankly, vote with us and support pension reform, because that's the biggest issue facing our unions, facing our union. We got to make sure our members can retire with some dignity. And it's not going to get done by name calling. So we've got to make sure that whoever we endorse is going to support our cause. The same thing is going on because they've moved, ALEC and others have moved from state to state with right to work. I've been fighting right to work in West Virginia, and fortunately we just got a preliminary injunction against it. But we're looking at the big picture, not just the presidential race. But to answer your question, I think you will see an announcement from us. We're not going to support somebody who supports right to work, that's for certain.
Mr. Zuckerman?
We got the surveys, we're filling them out. We are going to support the person that best supports the Teamsters Union. At least that's what Local 89 will reflect on their survey. I wanted to talk about the right to work thing a minute and the AFL-CIO. In Kentucky, we work very hard with the AFL-CIO to make sure that we always defeat right to work. And we did defeat right to work. We worked and we worked and we worked. They had a special election. We actually won 3 seats, and any politician in Kentucky will tell you that it wasn't for the efforts of labor that we would have right to work. That is not true in West Virginia. West Virginia, they didn't do the job to keep it out of there. Ken Hall's local.
Mr. Hall, your response?
Look, I can only respond if the record is pretty clear. Not only did we work with the AFL-CIO unions, but I was the person designated for labor to testify for 3 hours at the Senate Judiciary Committee just 2 weeks ago. I was the person that the AFL asked to represent the entire labor movement in West Virginia in a court hearing where we sought a preliminary injunction to stop right to work for now, and we were successful at that. But for Fred to suggest that that somehow means we're not working with the AFL-CIO is yet another thing that's not exactly true.
I'm going to use my discretion here to ask a follow-up question and give both of you 45 seconds to respond, because I really want to get at this issue. Obviously, you're in a hard spot given this is a presidential election cycle. Is there any truth to the idea that the Teamsters would like to endorse Hillary Clinton but are worried that would rankle the rank and file who may be supporting Donald Trump? Mr. Hall, can I start with you?
Well, let's be clear. If you look at working people across this country, our members have questions about both of the candidates. Now, I think it's pretty clear that, one of them is, I'm reminded of other people. One of them is seems to be an angry man who spews out lots of falsehoods. And so we're not, and he has already demonstrated he's for right to work. And I think once we've given them that message and they understand where he and the Republican platform, we have been educating our members about the Republican platform to do exactly what you're talking about, to make sure that we're not just saying, hey, we tell you to support this. They've got to be on board with that, and that's what we're doing. But the answer is we are not going to wait. You will see, I would guess, in the next 7 to 14 days, an endorsement from the Teamsters.
You hear to her first. Mr. Zuckerman, 45 seconds.
I think the IBT has squandered an opportunity. Typically in these types of elections, you go and you talk to the candidates, you identify the ones that you want to endorse, and then you work with them to make sure that they are going to help you going forward. You negotiate with them. The IBT has squandered that. We're only 75 days away from the election. It's too late to do that now.
Thank you. We're going to do one more round from the panel here, and then we'll go to questions submitted by the campaigns and by people, members as well. So the next question is for Mr. Zuckerman from Mr. Rose.
As you know, the union has touted the end of the 1989 consent decree that dictated federal supervision of the union. It restricted many of the union's activities, but it was replaced by a different document, the final agreement, which permanently replaced the independent review board with a different enforcement mechanism, and also still requires that elections be independently supervised. I'm wondering your view of how significant are these changes, and how do you expect union governance to change under the new final agreement?
I think it was a mistake to petition the court and try to get out of the consent order at the time that they did last January. They are fully aware that there's still corruption in the union. They went to the court and told them that we were corruption-free, and we're not. Every day you hear something new about corruption, and the IBT is not doing anything to correct it. We have an international vice president out west, Roma Lois, who has been brought up on charges that the IBT has delayed for twice now. And his hearing won't be till October 11, and there's no question he's going to get thrown out of the union for what he did. I've read the deposition, I've read the charges. He admitted to a lot of the things that they accused him of. There's no getting out of that. We had another incident with the Ohio Conference. Ken Hall was directly involved in that because he didn't do his job to monitor what the Ohio Conference was doing year after year after year. In our business, we're required to send in monthly trustee reports, and the IBT has an ability to go in there and audit the conference. And he didn't do that. In 2006, we were given a recommendation by the IBT to shut all the conferences down. I was the president of the Kentucky-West Virginia Conference. Ken was on that conference. We shut it down for exactly the reasons why they took the Ohio Conference down and put it into trusteeship.
Your response, Mr. Hall?
Fred, I just want to point out you were the head of that conference at the time. But first of all, he's talking about people who's been charged. There is people that's been charged, and there will always be people who has been charged. Now, I don't believe Fred's going to be the judge and jury on this, but we believe in the same concept that we believe for our members. If they get terminated by the company, they're not guilty until proven innocent. They are innocent until proven guilty. If the courts decide, then we will address it in the manner we should. But I just want to point out, Fred's buddy and his running mate, Brad Slauson, embezzled $220,000 from the union, and this is what Fred said: "Whatever I can do to help, I'm in. Brothers forever." He supported him breaking the union for $220,000 because he was his running mate. This is your email.
Mr. Zuckerman, your response?
Yeah, Brad Slauson was Jim Hoffa's buddy and his pick for vice president. Okay? When he needed some help, probably what that email says, I told him I was going to help him with legal fees or whatever. But that was before that was before the IRB reports got out and those kind of things. Ken Hall knew in 2006, and I was president of the Kentucky-West Virginia Conference, and we closed it down because we were told to close it down for all the reasons why the Ohio Conference should have been closed down.
The next question goes to Mr. Hall, and it comes from Kimberly Atkins.
Mr. Hall, like with all elections, turnout is important. In the last election in 2011, about 250,000 members voted. That's less than a fifth of the total membership. Why is the membership so tuned out?
Well, turnout is and always has been a problem for us since we started to direct elections. And I absolutely support always having our members have the opportunity to vote for the top officers. One of the things, we tried a lot of different things. The election office themselves, the last time, actually had celebrities doing robocalls to our members to try to get them to come out and vote. I think a lot of the issues, quite frankly, is that if a member is satisfied with their contract, they're satisfied with the way things are going, they don't bother to get involved in the process, and that's unfortunate. We would like, it would certainly benefit me in this campaign or the Hoffa Hall team if we had 90% turnout. But I don't, that's something that we've all been working toward to see how we can get more people to turn out.
Your response, Mr. Zuckerman?
The members are angry, just like I am. The members are angry. They've lost hope, and quite frankly, they want something different. That should turn out the vote. I think it will in this election. Last time we didn't have a campaign going. A lot of people were shielded from the election. This time it's different. It's not. We're getting the word out. We're making sure that people have an opportunity to know that there's an election and that there's going to be that they're going to have to get out there and vote.
Would you like a 30-second response?
I would just point out that Fred was on the slate on the opposite side the last time, and it was the lowest voter turnout that we've had in all the elections. So I don't believe that's quite accurate.
Next question is from Mr. Zuckerman from Mr. Myerson.
Mr. Zuckerman, in Seattle, at the prompting of some Seattle Teamsters and Teamster lawyers there, the Seattle City Council voted to give collective bargaining rights to independent contractors, driving in Uber and Lyft, and cab drivers as well. Obviously, the whole issue of whether your members are mislabeled as independent contractors, that's been an issue with the port truckers. But all of this leads to the question of the next time labor people and progressives push for labor law reform, you're looking at a different kind of job market where all kinds of people may not be in traditional employment relations. What do you think the Teamsters should be talking about in terms of the next generation of labor law reform? Who should be covered? How should that work?
Well, first of all, I think the Teamsters need to fix their own house first before they start getting into discussions about going outside of our core industries. We've got a lot of problems with standards. We've got a lot of problems with pension. We've got a lot of problems with all those things. Fundamentally, I believe that everybody in America has a right to get together and join a union. I would not be an opponent to that. I think that the Teamsters Union should fix their own problems before we start going outside and fixing somebody else's problems.
Mr. Hall?
Well, I don't consider organizing new workers outside. I consider that something that's our duty to do. Now, it doesn't quite square with me to say we should fix our problems before we organize when I have heard us criticized because we don't organize enough. So I'm a little confused, but in terms of trying to answer directly the question of Uber and others like them. I mean, with all the technology, we know this is the new frontier, and so we have to be very careful. We want to give them the representation, but we've also been leading the fight against misclassification of workers, so we're not going to enter into a contract that waives our right to challenge the misclassification. So that's really the struggle right now. We are looking at getting into those industries, and we should. Because we have to move with the times. But we also have to protect the integrity of those contracts.
Mr. Zuckerman? You have 30 seconds to respond.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, like I said before, I mean, they have a right, Americans have a right to have a voice in what they want. If they collectively assert that voice, I think that is a good thing. I think that, like I said before, we need to fix our problems first. We've got a lot of problems. You know, we're not organizing. We've lost 400,000 members in the 17 years that HOFFA's been there. And we need to focus on the industries that we already have.
Thank you. We're now going to go to a portion where I'm going to ask some questions submitted by your campaigns to each other, as well as questions submitted by members of the Teamsters. The question now goes to Mr. Hall. This question is from Frank Villa of Local 630 in Los Angeles. I'm going to read some words here that these are from Mr. Villa. You celebrated, Mr. Hall, government getting out of the union, but your former anti-corruption czar, Ed Steyer, said the test is how leaders respond to corruption, circle the wagons, or repudiate. When your trade show division director had thugs extort, and assault members, you found him innocent. Today he's in jail. You refused to hold hearings on corruption charges against your running mate, Roma Luis, for taking employer gifts in exchange for contract concessions. Why don't you take action against corruption, and will you repudiate Roma Luis right now for labor racketeering?
First of all, I think they must be talking about, I'm not certain, they didn't name any names, but I believe they're talking about somebody in the first instance who we did not try and find innocent. They went through the court system and was found guilty. And once they were found guilty, then they were removed. Again, they get their day in court, and we complied with that. The one thing that is clear, let me be clear about this. The Teamsters Union does not condone violence, nor do they condone corruption. And so in the case of Roma Luis, I've already answered that question once, but he's going through the system. We're not delaying anything. We followed our Constitution, and his hearing is scheduled, and that is what's supposed to happen, and we will talk about, we will deal with that once his case is heard, just like we have for the last 25 years.
Your response, Mr. Zuckerman?
Sure. Corruption in the Teamsters Union is just unacceptable. The first gentleman he was talking about was John Perry, Local 82 in Boston. The IBT knew for years about what was going on up there and never would act on it. He was a director of a division, I forget which division, but tonight he's sitting in jail because the IBT never did do anything about it, and they allowed him to continue in his capacity in leadership when they knew that things were wrong. The same things happened to Roma Luis. Roma Luis is the director of the dairy division. He's the director of the warehouse division, I think. And they should have at least suspended him instead of continuing to allow him to represent the membership in any of those divisions.
Your response, Mr. Hall?
Have you sent him any money for his legal expenses like you did Brad Slauson? You know, we've covered this ground. They are entitled to a hearing. But, Fred, there is something you have a chance to fix. You've got one of your delegates was disqualified by the election office and was not only disqualified, but banned from being at the convention, banned from even being in a hotel. Now, what action did you take? I will tell you what action. You appealed that decision. And in the appeal, after first denying that it happened, your lawyers agreed that it happened, but you didn't like the penalty. Have you done anything? Have you removed him as steward?
I'll give you 45 seconds to answer that, Mr. Zuckerman.
To answer that question?
He's asked you several questions.
You know, we're getting off track, and this is getting ridiculous. I mean, we had one guy push a guy. He got disqualified for being a delegate, and that was the end of it. As for me sending Brad Slauson any money, I never sent Brad Slauson any money. How do you make this stuff up? I mean, you're making it up. As you keep going, you're making stuff up, and that's the problem when you tell a lie, because you'll always get caught in it.
Mr. Hall, I'll give you 45 seconds, and then we're going to get back to our regular order.
Well, I think when I read what you said in the email, I think you said maybe I sent him that to maybe do something about legal expenses. That was before the IRB report. I took it from what you just said. But I would point out in your email, it was clear that he'd already been put in trusteeship, and your words are your words. Now, it's not just a small incident that happened in Local 89. This was battery on another of your members in your local union who is a steward. And I'm going to ask you one more time. Did you remove him as a steward, or are you allowing someone to serve and represent your local union who was convicted not charged, as you've talked about some of our other people, convicted of committing battery against another of your members.
Gentlemen, we could go on and on about this for a little while, it seems, so I'm going to move on to the next question. You can use your time at any point later on to respond to that if you'd like. This question is for Mr. Zuckerman. This is submitted by Tommy Ratliff of Local 639. Mr. Zuckerman, you have said that the solution to the pension problems is to organize workers into pension plans. Out of the 4 small companies you have organized in the last 5 years, how many have you put into Central State's pension fund?
3.
3 out of the 5.
3 out of 4, I think you said.
I'm sorry.
Wasn't it 4? Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
3 of them. Yeah, let me just say this about that. I am a proponent of supporting the Central States Pension Fund, unlike the International Union. They're doing everything that they can do to kill it. I organized 3 companies recently. We put in, it was Precision Auto, it was World Class Corrugated, and it was the Voith people that we got back after the International Union wouldn't help us at all during a 2.5-year battle that we got a $20 million back pay over. We need to continue to do that. I can tell you one thing, is that I have got more Central States pension participants than Ken Hall's even got in his local. He's lost 25% of his local, and I've got more that just participate in Central States.
Mr. Hall, would you like to respond?
You know, I'm trying to see, at one point, Fred, I thought you just was confused, and now I think you might just be lying. 400,000 members that we lost, 25, did we have a 1.8 million members at some point that I didn't know about? 25% of my local, you're just making it up as you go. But, let's do this. Let's talk about the Voight. You have told everybody around the country about Voight and how the IBT wouldn't help you. I have an email here where you thanked our general counsel for giving him assistance on the strike benefits. And let's talk about this. IBT's lawyer represented you and won the case for you. Then you went off and met with the company, cut a deal for $15 million. The regional director of the NLRB refused to take it and sent you back to get $20 million. You settled short again, Fred.
Mr. Zuckerman, 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah, I mean, 30 seconds ain't going to be able to respond to this. There was no agreement for $15 million. It was always $21.6 million. The regional director never sent us back to get no money. That's a damn lie. What else was there? There's plenty more lies out there. I mean, I just can't keep up with them all. You keep spewing them out there.
I think we're going back to Mr. Hall next. Mr. Hall, a question for you from Paul Hazlett, Local 377 in Youngstown, Ohio. I haul GM cars out of the Lordstown plant in Ohio. Auto companies are making record profits, but Hoffa negotiated a concessionary contract which was rejected by 87% of our members. When the UPS contract was negotiated, 2/3 of the members voted down their supplements after their health care was cut. Freight concessions were voted down repeatedly. Doesn't this show the national leadership is totally out of touch with the members?
Well, my opponent's been going around trying to get people to turn down the current car haul contract. I understand that. Here's what I would point out in terms of how we negotiate. Fred became the car haul director in 2005. So I took the same years that he was a car haul director and matched him the same years that I was the director of UPS. And here's how it turned out. UPSers got $6.60 an hour in raises, and car haulers got $1.75 an hour in raises. And so I don't. We're not talking about concessions here. We're talking about, we're just talking about somebody who is just like he did with UPS. Now, Fred's playing politics with the car haul contract. The car haul contract is better.